Alright, this is Unit 8, Formative 1, Video 2, Factoring Trinomials. Alright, so these are trinomials. It's a little different than what we did before, okay? But you first always look to see if there's a common factor. So I'm going to look at 3, 13, and 10. And there's not a number that goes into those, okay? So when we factor trinomials, okay, we're going to end up with two sets of parentheses, okay? Right? And this is like our answer is going to be a binomial times a binomial, okay? Your first term here, okay? This will always be prime for us being algebra students, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to split it up. We're going to put a 3x in the first parentheses and an x in the next one, okay? So the coefficient's going to go in the first parentheses and then split your x's up, okay? Now to find the rest of it, what we're going to do is we are going to take our a times c term, okay, and we're going to multiply it, okay? Now remember from the past, we have ax squared plus bx plus c, okay? So your a is your first term, your b is your middle term, and your c is your last term, okay? It always goes in that order with the exponents, okay? So our a times our c, which is 3 times negative 10, is going to be negative 30, okay? So we're going to put that there. Okay? Now, on this column, we are going to put our b term, which in this case is the middle term, is 13, okay? All right, so we want factors of negative 30, okay? So we want numbers that when I multiply I get negative 30, but when I add them I get 13, okay? So when we start here, okay, this does get faster. I'm just going to start with 1 and go down until I don't repeat any more numbers, okay? So how it looks is if I take negative 1 times 30, I multiply those, I get negative 30, okay? Now, when I add, I get 29, okay? Well, I want 13. Okay, that didn't work. So now 2 will go into 30. So I'm going to negative 2 times 15. Okay, so when I multiply these two, I get a negative 30. And when I add negative 2 plus 15, I get 13. Okay, now that matches, okay, what I want. Okay, so my two factors are going to be negative 2 and 15. Okay, now these two terms have to multiply to get either negative 2 or 15, and then these two terms have to multiply to get either negative 2 or 15. Okay, so here's the thing you got to think about. This is a 3. Okay, so you need to look which one of these will 3 go into. Well, 3 will go into 15, so I'm going to put a 15 here, and that means my negative 2 goes up there. Okay, so now the 15 means we're going to take this term times this term, which we don't know what it is, and we have to get 15. So 3 times what will equal 15? And my answer is 5. Okay, and it's a positive 5, so I'm going to put a plus 5 there. Okay, now this one, the middle one's going to be easy, okay, because this is always going to be a 1 for us. So whatever this is just going to go in that spot. So that would be a negative 2. Okay, so my answer, just so it's a little easier to see, is 3x minus 2, x plus 5. Okay. Now we can double check it because we've already done the multiplication part. So 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 5 is 15x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. Okay, and then when I combine the middle two, I get 3x squared plus 13x minus 10, which is the original problem. Okay, I know that's a lot of information, but we're going to do a lot of these, and we'll follow some steps. All right, let's look at another. All right, so we have 2x squared plus x minus 15. So again, first thing you need to check is, will anything go into all three of those numbers besides a 1? And that's not the case, so we're going to leave it. Then we're going to start with our two parentheses. All right, and remember, we're going to take this, whatever number's here, in one of the x's, and the other x is going to go in the parentheses. Okay. Now we're going to take our a times our c. 2 times negative 15 is negative 30. Okay, and we want that to equal our b term, which is a positive 1. Okay, so some of you guys can come up with the factors a lot faster, but I'm just going to go through them. Okay, now remember, you got to multiply, get a negative, so I need one negative and one positive. So if I multiply those two, I get negative 30, and when I add, I get 29. Okay, well, I don't want 29. Okay, so let's try negative 2. Negative 2 and 15. When I multiply, I get negative 30. When I add, I get 13. Well, I don't want 13. So I'm going to try 3. Negative 3 and 10. When I multiply, I get negative 30. But when I add, I get 7. I don't want 7. So 4 won't go into it, but 5 will. So negative 5 and 6. When I multiply those, I get negative 30. And when I add, I get 1, which is what we want. So here are two numbers. So we have to have a negative 5 and a 6. So these two have to multiply to be either negative 5 or 6, and then this one's the other one. So again, we're going to take the 2, okay, and which one will 2 go into? Well, it'll go into the 6. So I know that the 6 is here, and the negative 5 is here. Okay, so again, this negative 5 is just going to be brought up here. That's the easy one, okay? But on this one, we have to take 2 times what to get 6, okay? You also can think of it, 2 will go into 6 how many times? It'll go in 3 times. So this is going to be a positive 3. Okay, so again, these two have to multiply to be 6, and these two have to multiply to be negative 5. Okay, and then you can distribute to check your answer. All right, next one. Okay, same thing. So again, take a look. We have 1, negative 7, and 12. Nothing will go into all of them. So I'm going to go ahead and start my parentheses. Okay, now this doesn't have a coefficient, so all I have to do is split my x's up. Okay, and we have a times c, which a times c is 12. And I want that to add up to b, which is negative 7. Okay, so now here, you're multiplying to get a positive, but when I add, I get a negative. So here I have 2 negatives. So multiply 2 negatives to get a positive, and when I add my 2 negatives, I get a negative. So I know my problem should be negative. So negative 1, negative 12. If I multiply, I get a positive 12. When I add, I get negative 13. That's not what I want. So let's go negative 2 and negative 6. When I multiply those, I get a positive 12. When I add, I get negative 8. Well, I want a negative 7, so that doesn't work. So negative 3 and negative 4. When I multiply those, I get a positive 12. When I add, I get negative 7, which is what I want. Okay. Now this one doesn't have a coefficient, so this one just has a 1, so it really doesn't matter where your numbers go. Okay, so this would just bring a negative 3 and a negative 4. And there's my answer. All right, so this one only has 2 terms, so this one's a little different. Okay, now one thing you need to notice, it only has 2 terms. Okay, so the middle term is missing, and 4 and 9 are what we call perfect squares. Okay, so we can't do them the same. They're actually a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead and make my 2 parentheses. Okay, and now remember, this times this gives me 4x squared. So when they're perfect squares, you need to split them up. So it's 2x and 2x gives me 4x squared. And then the negative 9, how I split the negative 9 up is what times itself equals 9. Well, it's a negative 3 and a positive 3. Right? And that's my answer. So they're a little different. So for example, if I had 25x squared minus 16, those are both perfect squares. So they would be split up 5x, and then the 16 would be split up. One has to be a negative 4 and one has to be a positive 4. And then that would be my answer.